Next, we'll turn to another speaker, our final speaker. And if peace must be passed to the next generation through story and imagination, it must also be practiced. Our final speaker has made it his mission to prove that peacemaking is not a gift a few people are born with. It is a skill, and it can be taught. Stephen Hecht is the co-founder and chief executive Peacemaker, Chief Executive Peacemaker. There's a title of Million Peacemakers, a nonprofit dedicated to helping individuals, families, workplaces, schools, and communities transform conflict into connection through the non-conflict way. A former business leader with more than 35 years of experience, Stephen co-authored the #1 best-selling book, Nonflict, The Art of Everyday Peacemaking, which has since become the foundation for training programs that have reached more than 2.5 million people and positively impacted over 7.8 million lives. He is one of the leaders behind the youth-led Peace Collaboration, which is working toward an ambitious goal of equipping 250 million young people with peacemaking skills by 2035, and he is doing it. Stephen, may I turn over to you, and will you share your wisdom with us?
Thank you, Lindsay. What a great panel. I'm learning from all of you, and I've got overlap experiences with each of you. Each 1,000-mile journey begins with a single step. That was my quote in my high school yearbook. And Gordon, your story about your mother. We learn from our parents, we learn from their parents, we learn from their parent how to deal with conflict. And again, as Jakub mentioned, you were fortunate enough to have Barb as your teacher and mentor and role model. But our framing, the way we deal with conflict, isn't always that of Barbara Winston, and mine certainly wasn't. So I didn't have the tools to deal with conflict constructively. And conflict is just two or more different perspectives coming into contact with each other. By definition, it's neither positive or negative. It's how we deal with the conflict that is either going to be constructive or destructive. And what we're doing is giving people tools to deal with conflict in a constructive way because we need different perspectives for innovation and growth as individuals, as organizations, and ultimately the world. So my journey, which started in a family business, which was rife with conflict and destructive conflict, led to looking for a more constructive way to deal with it. I found you cannot win a negotiation with your spouse. It took me 3 to find that out or discover that. I'm happily married the third time because I have more constructive ways of dealing with conflict. You can't win a negotiation with your business partner or your employees. So in looking for a better way, I found there was much wisdom out there. And I bought a dozen books on the topic, and I was going to run this event for a group called YPO across Canada. And I found typically, though, that the wisdom was by PhDs for other PhDs, and none of us are going to read a 980-page handbook when we have a conflict. Led me down a rabbit hole to look for a much simpler way of spreading what we now call nonflict, which is a constructive way of dealing with conflict. And in 2012, we led this event for YPO across the country, and we found 85% of the people were able to resolve the conflict without the other person even being there in the room, just by going through the process and putting yourself in the other person's shoes and answering a simple question or these questions, which are, what are your facts and feelings around that conflict and what's important to you? And then if the other person was there, how do you think they would answer? And often we find that what's important to me is important to you. We all, and this doesn't matter what culture, religion, race you are, wherever you are in the world, we all want to feel respected. We all want to feel safe. We want to feel important and understood. And we all want to have hope for a future, for our children and future generations. My grandchildren are here. That's all we hope for, that they have a world of peace. And we find what's important to me is important to you. Then we realize that we want the same thing. So step 1 of nonflict is understand yourself and your partner. Step 2 is to understand your shared reality. What's our real underlying conflict versus the symptoms of the conflict? Usually it's we have different framing. The way we interpret facts, the lens through which we see the world is different because of our upbringing, our culture, our education, our personality. What's our real underlying conflict? We have to agree on that. Then we look at what's working well. What do we appreciate about the other person? Then what's our worst case scenario if we cannot resolve this conflict, and how would that feel? Because we need a real or perceived crisis to take action for change. Step three of Nonflict is co-create our mutual ideal reality, where we visualize our ideal reality and how that would feel. Then what are the obstacles to achieve it? And then of the obstacles we could control or influence, what could we do to overcome them? Those are the three steps of Nonflict. Simplified, fits on the back of a business card. Um, and we've spread that from an in-person workshop in YPO in 2012 to virtual workshops during on Zoom during COVID, and then we've put that into an Alexa skill followed by a AI tool, and now as Gina is doing, we're gamifying it through apps in collaboration with our partners. So we're looking at creating AI or harnessing AI and technology for good. One of our board members started AI for Good, which was given over to the UN ITU. And um, the learning is that peace doesn't come naturally. We learn from our parents, and if we don't have Barb as a parent, we might not have that come naturally, yet could definitely be taught and learned and practiced.
Thank you, Stephen. Truly remarkable what you're able to do on the macro level and the micro level of individual persons. A follow-up question for you. You are now working with global partners toward equipping 250 million young people with peacemaking skills by 2035. How does that work? Why are young people central to this effort? And what will it take to make peacemaking part of everyday education and culture? Can it be done?
Thank you, Lindsay. We've spent our first 9 years trying to build a community, and we had trained about 250,000 people. And then we were challenged by the director of the Kigali Genocide Memorial to train 1 million young people in memory of the genocide against the Tutsis. That if humanity could allow 1 million Tutsis to be killed in 100 days, could we not train 1 million peacemakers in their memory? And we realized we would have to do things differently in order to scale. And we realized at that point, partnership was key. And we found research showed that by Dr. Erica Chenoweth at Harvard, all you need to be a virtually unstoppable force for peace is 3.5% of the population working toward it. 3.5% of the world is 250 million. That became our goal. And we found that there are 6 large youth organizations called the Big Six that are already working with 250 million youth. So we said, great, let's work with them. And 2 weeks later, and magic started happening. Our executive director was teaching Nonflict at McGill for executive education. The head of HR at the World Scout Movement said, we need to work together. This is great. They're one of the Big Six. And another person, Will Kennedy, who is retiring from the head of partnership at the UN, you might know him. Gina, you know him. He was a great human being. He said, I want to make an impact on my last 3 days at work. And he introduced us to a number of people, including Carlos Sanvi, the Secretary General of the YMCA. And he invited us to Geneva to meet. And this was in January 2024. And he brought the head of the steering committee of the Big Six. And they said, we all care about peace. The Red Cross is one of them. They won the first Nobel Peace Prize. The YMCA has it as part of their Vision 2030. Can you lead us in this initiative to train 250 million? Because we want to think big and we agree with this vision. And obviously that was something we just talked about in our planning meeting 6 months earlier. So since then, we've been working with them. We've added JA worldwide. We work with 20 million youth a year. UN Youth just joined us. We were together in Toronto last week with the head of UN Youth, and we're adding other partners as we go along to train 250 million youth as peacemakers with these communities that they already have in place for over 175 years in some cases. So we're using their infrastructure, their youth, trusted youth mentors, teachers, and peer-to-peer youth training to give them these tools. And not to say we have the only tools, but we learn from each other and we all collaborate with each other on the tools we all have to spread peace.
Thank you so much, Stephen. We all can learn from you and admire your work. You've made the case with evidence that peace is not a state we wait for. It is a practice we build, one person and one community at a time. I'll do a final question where I'll ask our speakers, our distinguished guests, to answer in 1 to 2 sentences a very hard question. Our formal education systems were not designed with peace as a central organizing purpose. What is the most important thing they consistently leave out? And in that, where do you see the single greatest gap between education and culture and what they're currently doing in talking about the peace impact they could have?
Education is so important, and it's the teachers who are the role models, the leaders. Culture starts at the top in an organization, in a country, and it's school, it's the teachers. So I think empowering the teachers with these tools is so critical. And we know teachers are overloaded. The last thing they want is to learn something else, yet if they realize that a lot of their job is dealing with conflict. Much of their job is dealing with conflict. If they had the tools to deal with conflict constructively that they could then model to their kids, I think this would be a great gift to teachers and to our youth.
Thank you, Stephen.